Evening, everybody. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? It's my worst nightmare. Hi Ash, hi Lee. I was half expecting you to be half cut, Ash, by now after those couple of glasses of wine. Hi Matt. I don't know about you guys, but we've had snow down here in the south today. Not much, just a little smattering, but enough for it to sort of actually start to feel a bit like winter, and the gradient fishing can actually start properly. Hi Malcolm, hi Phil, hi Rob. Yeah, that's dangerous, Ash. Those couple of glasses turned into a bottle. It's very dangerous. I have a nice, as Hannibal Lecter would say, I have a nice Chianti this evening. Don't forget, folks, that to remind people in the group that we're live this evening, because people do ask for live tying, and hopefully we can ensure that we can at least get some flies tied. Whether or not they'll be any good, different matter, but we'll try and get as many flies as we can tied this evening. Yep, Happy New Year, Adam. Same to you. It's 2022 already. You know, when you start reading statistics like Nirvana's Nevermind was released over 30 years ago, Massive Attack's Blue Lines, you start to feel really old. Hi Dave. And hi Brian. Nice to see you guys. Anyone been out? Anybody going out this weekend? Adam's telling me to stop. Yes, I still feel. Well, I still think I'm 18. I'm not. Right then, folks, we're going to maximise some tie-in time this evening. Don't forget, for those that might be new, or those that know me well but haven't done it yet, don't forget I'm on YouTube, and I'm going to be adding more and more videos on YouTube, as well as downloadable PDFs of tying patterns as well, with step-by-step videos. And hopefully I can get some lots up there. So like, subscribe, share, do all those wonderful things for me. That'd be absolutely fantastic. So Phil's me on Catch and Release on Sunday. Nice, Phil. I hear it's fishing well, particularly after a fairly recent restock. Matt, too cold, too wet. Yeah, pretty much, I like the weather to be dry and crisp at this time of year, not wet. I don't like being wet. And Ash, you're at Martin Heath on Sunday. Yeah, I'm not going to get out this weekend, but I'm going to try and get out next week. And then, of course, next weekend we've got quite an expedition planned, which more on that in the group later on, I'm sure, from the admin team. Right then, folks. So today is all about winter stillwater patterns, and we get lots of people. I'm very conscious that on the group, we have a lot of people that that are starting off, a lot of people that are starting off tying, but also a lot of people that still waters and small still waters are their bread and butter fishing experiences, and that's absolutely wonderful, absolutely fine. And I've tied a lot of flies on here that are river related, but also can transfer to a still water. But I thought I'd just concentrate on some of the still water patterns that I'll fish with when I'm at places like Meon Springs or a Diva place like this, and also a bit about how I might fish them. So we're going to start off with this little guy here. Let me just make sure that that's all in frame. There we go. So so the cat's whisker, there she is. So this is not the traditional cat's whisker, but it is a variation of it, as most flies are. This is a variation that I think gives lots of movement in the water, and is pretty universally recommended on most still waters. You know, if you're going to stick a fly on for a searching fly, you know, and you don't want to put a blue flash damsel on, cat's whisker is a way forward. This particular version is weighted. It doesn't have a bead though, because what I've tried to do is what I have actually done is I've put a central core of lead wire in here, just in the body, so that when it sinks, it doesn't sink head first. The aim of this fly is, the presentation is for it to sink uniformly through the water column, rather than just tipped up or tipped down, and ensuring that we get that nice steady just drop as it drops through, because as we know, a lot of fish at still waters will hit on the drop, particularly during cold weather. I'm going to start off with a cracking little hook, which is the Sprite streamer hooks. This is a size 12. They're also really good for muddlers and long body nymphs as well, so not just for streamers. So just remember that, and most of you know this, but most of the hooks you can utilize for different things, and I try and do that as much as possible. So I'm going to start off with this size 12. I like it for my patterns because it's got this long shank here, but it's actually got a very small gape on it on here, so when the fish take it, it's going straight in. I'm going to put that into the vise. There we go. Don't forget, in the comment section, if you want to throw up questions or comments, tell me to stop being so bloody stupid, please feel free. And feel free to answer back to people, guys. This is a community session, so this is about us talking to each other about stuff. So I'm going to put on some lead wire to start off, and I'm going to put on 15 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I find 15 because it puts it measured out. It's right slap bang in the centre and leaves me an equal amount at the back of the shank and also at the front. And I'm going to come in and I'm just going to nip these off, the end bits off, with a little tiny pair of wire snips. And I'm using these rather than pinching it off because I want to get them quite close. There we go. And I'm just going to push those together like so. Okay, and I've just tidy up those end pieces of lead, and we're ready to go. Now, in terms of thread, I'm going to use some UTC Ultra Thread 70 denier. More on the reasons why in a second. This one's just come out, so I'm just going to rethread this into my bobbin. There we go. Now I'm using the UTC today because I like the fact that it will lie very flat, and I can actually manipulate the shapes that I'm going to get in my flies. So all the flies today are going to be tied with UTC thread today. Okay, so I'm going to start off. I'm going to catch on, and I'm going to leave 1 to 2 mil right before the eye, because that's my point where I'm going to go. I don't want to go past that because I'm going to be chasing the eye, and anything beyond that is going to really cramp it all up, and it's going to get a little bit challenging. And then I'm just going to take my tag end, and I'm going to bring it across the top of the wire, and I'm going to use my thread, and I'm just going to wind it through the wire spring-like coils all the way down. Don't worry if you go over them once or twice. Bring it all the way down to the end, and that locks it in place. Now, I don't tend to use super glue for these because, as I've said on many occasions, I end up super gluing my fingers together. I don't trust the stuff, or I don't trust me with the stuff. So I'm just going to take it up to my thread up to in line with the barb. One more will do, and then I'm going to bring it back, and I'm just going to go over the lead just to tidy it all up. Back to the beginning, like so, and then back again. And I'm going to stop just before, and I'm just going to make a couple of turns before the lead, just to step it up so I don't get any unsightly lumps. I'm going to take it all the way back until I get to the back, and I'm going to do the same again. I'm just going to form a little ramp, little step, and then I'm going to come back in, and we've got our base down. Okay, so our base is in. Now, cat's whisker, turkey marabou, classic material to use, pretty universal in terms of it can be used in lots of different ways. It can be used as a hackle, it can be spun, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. But often we just use it for tails, and we use it for wings and bodies and things like that. I'm using some white turkey marabou. Now, I've always, in recent years, I've been really disappointed in the quality of turkey marabou that I'm getting, and I'm trying to find a supplier that I really get consistent results from has always been a bit of a challenge. And this is Vineyards, and Vineyards generally some very, very nice materials, but I pulled this one out, and you can see that this was in the pack compared to this. So, you know, you're not always getting a uniform piece of turkey marabou or marabou feather. So Vineyards, I'm afraid at the moment, they don't rate highly on my list. I do have quite a lot of Vineyards because I was given quite a lot. But actually, my preferred supplier, and it's really hard to get hold of at the moment because of Brexit and importing, is Nature's Spirit. Really do like Nature's Spirit, and Flybox as well. Flybox do some very, very nice marabou. So I'm going to use the tip of the marabou. Okay, so I suppose you could say that's very similar to the bloods that you can get packs of bloods. I'm just going to use the tip here because I'm not going to do much to it. And I've got a nice bushy tip. I want movement here. I want the fish to be able to spot it and go, right, I'm going to have that. I'm a little bait fish. I'm going to have a go at it and see if I can get my lunch sorted. So I'm going to place it, and I'm going to look, and I want it about the length of the shank, maybe a little bit longer. It's up to you. I don't tend to tie really long tails. I find that it's never made particularly much of a difference for me. Apart from long tails, I get lots of tail nips from the fish, and I don't get many hookups. So I'm just going to pinch, turn, and pull up so it sits on the top of the shank. And I'm going to put 2 lock-in turns in, and that holds my tail in place. Okay, now it's at this point that you can adjust the length of it. So you've still got enough slack where you can just give it a pull if you want to shorten it, or you can take a wrap off and you can lengthen it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my scissors 45 degrees, but I want that part of the marabou to actually cover the body, because I'm going to use that to build up some bulk at this point. So I'm just going to hold that in like that and tidy up my body. I'm going to come all the way to the front and then all the way back again. And as we know with fly tying, there's a lot of repetitive movement, but it's there for a reason. And using the least amount of turns that you can is always better than using too many. And the techniques that I'm using today on all of these flies are going to be techniques that are transferable to lots of different patterns. So, you know, change this to an olive tail and you immediately use the start of a blue flash damsel in there. Now, normally with the cat's whisker, you end up finding that it's tied with sort of a yellow chenille. It could be any colour. I'm going to go for this Flybox Mystic Olive Medium Crystal Hackle, which, as the name suggests, does act a bit like a hackle. So I'm going to take it out of the packet, and you can see that it's got quite long strands. And again, I'm after some movement. Now, yes, it's a synthetic material, and synthetic materials are always a little bit more challenging, I find, to play with, because it's finding the right ends and then teasing away at the ends like this to find the core. You can see that the core's just unraveled there. So I'm just going to cut the tip off. I'm going to come in at the other end this time. I'm going to look at the other end. Yeah, and the other end's an easier end for me, actually. So I'm going to place it on the top. I'm going to pinch it onto the shank, pinch turn again, round and up, and it's going to hold it in at the base of the tail. And I'm just going to put that to one side, and I'm going to take my tying thread down the shank, but not right to the end point of my underbody. More on the reasons why in a second, but it's to do with the wing and the positioning of the wing. Because otherwise, I am going to cramp up that. I'm going to cramp up that eye, and I don't want to do that. Now, this pseudo hackle has got these long sections on it, and they do twist when you tie them in. So I'm just going to bring it round underneath and up over the top, and I'm going to make one complete turn, and then I'm going to take my finger and I'm just going to sweep everything back, and then I'm going to make a touching turn, sweep back, touching turn, sweep back, touching turn, sweep back. Now what you're aiming to do here is not trap down those fibres, because otherwise you'd end up with flat spots and not much movement available from the material when it's in the water. So again, pulling back, up and around. And you can see it's forming this lovely hackle material here, which is giving a really nice effect. And one more, and I'm just going to keep going, doing the same thing all the way up to my tie-in thread. And I've got to remember, you see these bits are pointing forward. If I draw them back, it doesn't matter if you do trap some. It happens. You can always stop and just adjust it. Remember, it's not about speed. This is about tying a fly that's going to work for you. And I'm going to place it up, I'm going to hold it up, and I'm going to bring my thread in, and I'm going to move it from side to side just so that I can limit the number of fibres that I trap. And I'm going to come in again. So that's 2 turns, no more than that. And I'm just going to use the tip of my scissors just to trim off. And you've got these bits sticking out the front. I can always draw those back put in some locking turns. And if you find you've got anything sticking out at the front, you can just come in with your scissors, just give it a little nip. Better to deal with them early than deal with them later on. Okay, so there we go. So we've got this beautiful body. Now I'm keeping it really simple tonight, but with that tail, I could have put in you know, some crystal flash, purple crystal flash, really effective. Do think it gives a real advantage. You could put in some holographic tinsel, anything to make it just spark and just give it some life and give it some movement. So almost there. Now I'm going to come back to my marabou, and I'd like to form a wing. So I'm just going to draw the feather back from my marabou like that. You've got these long sections here, and I want it quite bulky, but not so bulky that I get this massive head on the front. Okay, and I'm just going to bring it down and take a big pinch. I'm just going to pull it off. I pulled off quite a lot there. We can get rid of a little bit there. I'm just going to pinch it. You can see I've got a large tuft that's going to form the wing across the top. And you can see at this end I've got all of the bits of the central section of the feather. Now what I'm going to do with those is I'm just going to trim those off. So I've got rid of those, rid of those tough bits. Now I don't want a load of bulk right at the front, so I'm just going to use my nails. I'm just going to, just very carefully, without pulling loads out, just pull off little bits of the marabou, strip it off just at this far end, just to reduce down that bulk. There we go, until I'm happy with it. I've got a bit there I missed. There we go. Okay. You can see that the wing's going to sit here. Now I want the wing to come across the body, and I'm looking for it to not be totally the length of the tail, maybe halfway down the tail, so when it's in the water it sits and it's going to wave around. And I'm just placing it on the top. I'm going to put my fingers, I'm going to pinch it on, pinch wrap, so in between my fingers, bring it down, pull it down so it's on top of the hook shank, and lift up. And that's where I'm going to put most of my tension, on the upstroke, and it keeps it on the top, stops it from spinning round, and we get our wing in the position that we want it in. Okay, now I got to this point, I'm just going to put a few locking turns in like that. There we go, so peace of mind. And then I'm going to come in at 45 degrees or so, and I'm just going to use the tip of my scissors. I'm just going to cut the waist off, and then I'm ready to form my head. So I can see that I've got bits here that are just starting to get in the way. So I'm going to draw everything back, and I'm going to start at the eye. I'm going to work my way back gradually to the point at which I want my head to end, and then bring it forward again. Now it's at this point that you're going to find you've got a little step. So what I'm going to do is just going to spin my bobbin. I want to flatten out my thread, and I'm going to start to maximize the coverage of the head so I can trap down everything. And if I've got any little bits, I can come in later and trim those off. And we get this nice head. A little bit just underneath there that's going to annoy me now, so I'm just going to put it the side. I'm just going to trap those down. It doesn't matter, they could stay there. It's just my perfectionist streak. And there we go, and we're in. And now I'm going to come in with my whip finish tool. And I'm going to put 3, 4, 5 turns. Just tighten it up. And then I'm going to come in with my scalpel blade and just push the thread against the scalpel blade so I get a nice close cut. And then I've got, just check it over. You can probably see that's going to make those fish stop and have a look in the water. It's weighted, it's going to drop. You could tie them without the weight in them so that they could sit in the surface and sink very, very slowly. Best, in terms of, floating lines, on our still waters down here, floating lines absolutely, fine at this time of year. You don't really need a sinking line, but if you're going to have a sinking line, a slow sinking line is ideal for many of these still water patterns because it brings the fly down, and as you're bringing it back and you retrieve, the fly itself and the fly line are all in the same plane. So actually, they're not jerking up out of the water. They're actually moving in that zone that you're prospecting for to see if the fish are there, particularly if it's close to the bottom. Next stage, let's tighten up that head. Little bit of Sally Hansen, hard as nails. Going to come in and just tighten it up like so. It's not going to come undone, but also, varnishes and resins are great for ensuring that we can reuse flies multiple times. I'm just going to use a little bit of mono in here just to clear out that eye, like so I don't have to do that on the bank side. And there we have it. So so we end up with a lovely looking fly that's going to pick up fish. Try it, give it a go. You can make adjustments to it, change colors, you can do whatever you like with this. Choice is yours, it's endless. So thanks Dylan for that. Yeah, I can see that. What have I got on here? I've got lots of people, lots of Devons here. Neil, Rodri. Have you ever made a red cutthroat booby? I'll be honest with you, Rodri. I very rarely have ever tied a booby in my life. It's not something. They're not flies I've ever really used too much. So no, I haven't. Ash, do you find it such a dense body hackle and narrow gape hook impedes hookups? Do you know what? I've never really had an issue with it. And I like Dylan's response there that, you tend to find that they slam into these and they're going to take them and they hit them and they've turned straight into the scissors. The body hackle on this, although it looks really dense, is really soft. So it folds right under the hook by here. But of course, you can use all sorts of, whatever hooks you've got available. Just the Sprite streamer hook. You get 50 in a pack. Good quality. They do the job. Yep, Brian, yeah, exactly. Rubber legs. I did consider doing rubber legs, but I wanted to minimise the number of materials that I'm using today. Okay, so time for a little drink. Loving the questions, folks. Hey Dan. Right then, folks. So next one is a fly that, well, it's not really a fly; it's a worm, I suppose, for a still water. It's a chironomid, so it's a, you know, it's a bloodworm, and it comes after a long conversation I had with the late Roger Greentree down at Meon Springs about, again, centralising a mass on a bloodworm to get it to sink quickly to the bottom, but not sink head first. You know, which it would if we put our a bead right at the front here. So this is what I came up with, and Roger had a few from me and caught lots of fish on them, which I was really pleased about. But again, it looks complicated, but it's actually a very simple fly to tie. So it's a variation again. For this, I'm going to use the Sprite wet fly hook. It's extra strong because again they get hammered and picked up, and the fish run with them off the bottom. And again, 50 in a pack. Can't fault them, to be perfectly honest, for the price. Check them out on the website, lostlakefly.co.uk, along with lots of others. And the only big issue is getting out of the packet. So here we go. Right. So I'm just going to put it into the vise here. Now, the question is what to do with my beads. Now for this, I'm going to use a 3.3 a 3.3 mil bead. It's a rainbow bead from Funky Fly Tying, which basically means that, I don't know if I can see it there, it's got like a pinky red, and then the other half of it is I don't know if I can get it right round, is our normal gold, so it's spread around, and it just makes for a different type of, or different set of colours on the hook. And I'm going to put it on like so, and what I want to do is I want to get it so it's centralised in the middle. Now this is not as difficult as it sounds. Okay, so I'm coming in straight away with Super Stretch Floss Vineyards. Now I know I've given them a bit of grief about their Marabou tonight, but their Super Stretch Floss I really like. Can often find it in the sales section on many websites, and when it's there I tend to buy as much as I can, particularly in reds and olives, because those colours go really quickly, and pinks. Great for buzzer cheats, great for Flexi buzzers, and I'm going to use quite a lot, but I need to get it through the bead. Now it sounds a challenge, but not when you've got your trusty spool of very old now True Fly fluorocarbon that I use for ribs and things like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold a piece of fluorocarbon in half, so I've got a loop like this. And you can use this technique to with seed beads as well, anything really. And I'm going to place it through, so it's through my bead. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of Flexi floss and I'm going to put it at the other end of the loop like that. Basically all I'm going to do is just pull it through. So I'm basically threading the needle really. So I've done it with one, and I can do it with a second. You could do them both together, but you run the risk of them just getting a bit stuck. And is it worth the effort? Not really, because then you have to mess around and undo it all. So I'm just going to pull that through. Now, the other good thing about this is that for those of you that, I don't know, Phil's on here. Phil's on here and is an avid mullet fisherman, and Kieran, I think, is on here as well. I think I've seen Kieran. I'm planning to tie up a load of these in readiness for the next mullet season, because I reckon they could be pretty deadly out there with those mullet. So bear in mind that there's a massive crossover with flies at times. So I'm just going to position it. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it all now, and I'm just going to let it hang off the back like that, because what I want to do is I want to get my thread started. So I'm going to put my thread on, and I'm going to offer it up at the start just behind the eye, and I'm going to bring it down the length of the shank to in line with the barb of the hook, and bring it back to about halfway, just beyond. And I'm going to get rid of my tag end, so don't need that. And then I'm going to bring my bead up, and I've got my two end sections here, and I'm going to position, well, you can position that bead wherever you like. I'm going to position it in the middle. You can, at this point, you could pack it with a little bit of lead just inside to give it a little bit of extra mass. What you could also do is just put a little bit of UV resin in to hold it if you like. I tend not to do the UV resin, only on the basis that it can produce a little bit too much bulk, and then it messes up the profile of the fly, I find. So I'm just going to position it where I want it, and then I'm going to put in a turn just over the top of my Flexi floss, and I'm going to pull it tight, put another one in. Now this is another reason to use the UTC thread, because it can lie flat. It's not going to cut through the Flexi floss rubber. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it tight, because I want it quite flat, and I'm just going to make a couple of turns towards the eye. I'm just going to keep going. They can be touching if you like, and then work my way back. And then when I let go of this, you can see that they just stick out at a slight angle from each other, and my thread, if I just spin it counterclockwise every couple of turns, I can get it to lie flat, and I can get a really nice profile. So it's just sat just in the front like that. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I want to produce and put in a little dam of thread to stop the bead going forward past that point. So it does take a little bit of thread turning. I'm just going to build a body up. I'm going to make it sort of like a carrot style, thicker at one end, thinner at the other. Just be mindful of these, because they do get a bit in the way a bit. It's not a lot you can do about them. They do get wrapped around the bobbin. I'm going to take it up, and that's not going anywhere from that point. And I'm going to spin my bobbin counterclockwise. See, I've got this wrapped around my thread already. There we go. And I'm going to give it, I've got that flat profile, limited ridges. There we go. I'm going to bring it all the way back down to the eye. And we're in, and at this point, I'm going to put in one, two whip finishes. Don't need to put any more than that on, because we're going to put some resin on it towards the end. And I'm just going to trim that off. There we go. So that's not going to go anywhere now at that point. Okay, so a little trick now, because I've got these, I want to do the same at the other end, and this is where it gets a bit tricky, because I've got all these bits of rubber lying around, and all sorts of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I want to put my tie-in thread on. Now one of the things I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring these rubber legs this way. You can use this technique for lots of things, just to get things out of the way. And I'm just going to wrap a piece of lead wire just there to hold them so they're out of the way. And I'm just going to put on 1, 2, 3, just tie on, there we go, 4, tie on my thread. With my scissors, just going to nip that off there. Then I can undo my lead. And again, I'm going to do the same operation I did at the front, at the back. And I'm just going to pull it tight. Try and keep it on the top as much as I can. I don't want it to spin around. I'm going to bring it down. You've got these bits here that are going to flick around. Don't be tempted to cut them yet, because you'll regret it, as I've done many times when I've gone, oh my god, that's too short. Or yeah, good. Leaving it a bit longer is great, because you can just cutting them too short, you know, you've got no chance of rectifying that. And I'm going to build up my dam at the back. Now you need a little bit more thread for this bit, so obviously the countersunk hole is wider at the back. There we go, that's stuck in. But you can imagine doing this with seed beads, with multiple seed beads on here, with multiple legs coming off. You can adjust and have as many legs as can fit on these. There we go. I'm just going to spin my thread counterclockwise, and let's bring this out of the way. I'm just going to keep going until I'm happy with and I'm going to bring my thread back up towards the bead, and I'm going to whip finish 2, 3. Just move these rubber legs out of the way, bring it down, bring it up, and there we have it. So we've got our Flexi Floss bloodworm. That bead will spin at this moment in time, but we're going to rectify that with some resin in a moment. Now I'm going to take up my legs like this, and I'm going to hold them just above, and then I can gauge how long I want. Now if I stretch them, they're going to be shorter after I cut them, so you don't want to put any stretch on them. I'm just going to hold it there, and I'm thinking I've got 1, 2, 3 times the length of the shank. There we go. Okay, and they flick out, and you've got all this movement here. If you look at chironomid bloodworms in a sample, you'll find that they all intertwine together, so you have multiple ones together, and so you know these extra little legs here are going to imitate that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my Golf Thin Man resin. I lost the top on it, so little hint, little trick. I made a little cap out of some tin foil, and it's been like that for weeks, and it's perfect, and it's fine, and it's great, and I haven't had any problems. What I have lost though at this moment in time is my needle, because I like to use a needle to. Oh, there it is. I like to use a needle to apply it. I tend not to apply directly to the fly. I come in and I apply directly to my needle, because then I got precision in my application. I'm going to start at the bead, at the base of the bead, And I'm just going to dab some in there, bring it across the top of the bead to the front. Remember, this won't harden until you've got the UV light on it, so you can manipulate it as much as you like. You can move it around. Unless, of course, you're tying outside in the summer and you forget and you're starting to apply it and you realise that it's sunny and it's set before you've even got any further. Don't make that mistake. You learn from that. Just going to take a little bit more. I'm going to just spin the fly around. Now what this also does is it adds to the longevity of the fly and makes them almost bulletproof, because those fish have got really sharp teeth. You know, when you've gutted a trout, you know, how many times have you put your finger in its mouth occasionally and suddenly realised you've got lacerations down your finger? You know, it's always going to be something that we want. I like to think of my flies when I tie them. I'm going to take multiple fish on them, not just one. The only time where that isn't always the case is sometimes with some of the very delicate dries, and they can get mullered very quickly in the summer. So I'm just going to use my UV torch and move it around. And I'm just going to dry that. There we go. And you could put lead wraps in there. You could, you know, then put more body material in. You could do whatever you like. Don't have to use a bead. World's our oyster, and that's the great thing about fly tying, is that it's all about varying and innovating. And I'm just going to then come in, and I like to do this. It's a throwback to resins from years ago, and where they go all tacky. I like to just put a little coat of Sally Hansen just across the top as well, because then if it's ever going to still be tacky, for instance, if your torch isn't fully charged, then that does away with that particular problem. And there we go. Nice little Schwannomid bloodworm pattern. Okay, let's just come in and just see what I've been missing. Ooh, lots of mullet talk. Yeah, Phil. The Flexi worm. The Flexi worm's been around for a long time. Dan's talking about Vision Hero 5. Q, and yep, those dental floss threaders that you gave me worked really well. I just couldn't find them this evening. And we got lots of discussion there about mullet fishing. Yeah, bug bond has always been an issue, Phil. I've found. I don't use it. My go-to these days is Gulf resin. I do like it. Different viscosities. You know, it's all good. So far we've got our cat's whisker. There she is. We've got our Apps bloodworm here. I'm going to move it up into the water column now, and we're going to do a nice little buzzer, straight buzzer this time. I tend to tie most of mine on a curved hook, but you know, there's something about a straight buzzer. I'm just going to see if I can. There we go. Zone in a bit closer on that one. It's such a small fly. It's got holographic cheeks. It's got a holographic rib. It's just black. It's just got black thread body, and it's got a resin coating over it, which helps it sink through the water column. You don't have to put resin on it. You could leave it, but as I've said, because there's no wire in here, so the fish have got really sharp teeth. When they hit it, it's going to unravel really quickly. So you know, you've got multiple fish that you can take on this. I'm going to come back in for my size 12 wet fly hook for this. There we go. And just swap this one out. Again, I'm using UTC 70 denier thread in black. Again, because I can flatten it out, and my profiles. Oh, got a bit of thread in there. My profile of the fly, I can control it far better. So I'm going to come in, and again I'm going to leave 1 to 2 mil away from the eye, and I'm going to make touching turns all the way down to in line with the barb of the hook, or roughly where that is. 1, 2, 3 turns further up just to hold it, and I'm just going to pull that off, and we've got that in, and I'm going to come back with those 3 turns. There we go. So I've got a nice baseline there, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to use, for my rib, I'm going to use some of this Unimylar size 16 peacock on one side, so it's sort of like a vibrant greeny bluey silvery surface, and on the other side it's bright orange. It's a bit small to be able to see, but you might be able to pick it out there. If I turn it round, you've got the orange on the other side. You could use either side, whatever you like. Now if I'm going to use the peacock side, I need to tie in my rib with the orange facing towards me, or on the top. So I've just put it under, and then I'm going to pull it through, minimize the amount that I've got making up the bulk of the body. And I've got very flat thread here, and I'm going to take it up, just flatten that a bit more. Slim profiles on buzzers, I find I have more hookups on slim profile buzzers than I do on big chunky things. And then I've got you can see the orange there. I want the orange not to be upmost. So as I bring it round, you can see by placing it towards me when I tied it in, it's now on the underside of the rib. I'm going to put 3. I do really try wherever I can to make the turns equal distant from each other. Naturally that wouldn't occur, but it just makes you feel good. And I'm going to come in, I'm just going to nip that off, and I'm just going to tidy up the thorax area. There we go. So straight away we've got it set in, and I've got a nice rib in here. You could have done that with wire, you could do it with anything else, but I do like to use this holographic Unimylar peacock orange for lots of different applications. And that's the good thing about it, is that I find with flight, and I'm sure most of you guys do as well, is that I can read a pattern and go, okay, so it needs that, it needs that, it needs that, but I can substitute things in on many patterns, and they're just as good, and sometimes they even outfish, for me, the more traditional tying. There are some flies though that, of course, the traditional materials do make a big difference on. So flatten my thread out, and I'm going to bring my thread halfway up the thorax area. Now for my cheeks, I'm going to use some red holographic. This is medium width. I did have a piece cut here already. Where is it? Medium width. There it is. I want it quite large. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to tie it in underneath. Start off underneath. There we go. Underneath the shank. So I'm just going to bring it there, and then I'm going to pull the two ends towards the hook point and hold it down like that. And then I'm going to put in a lock-in turn, 1, 2, go forward, and then come all the way back and cover over. And then I'm going to build up my thorax as much as I want. It can be thick, it can be... I tend to make it sort of like a maggot shape, so it's thicker in the middle and thinner at either ends, or cigar shape, I suppose. And then I'm going to... Oop, that one just slipped off because I need it to flatten out. Around we go. And bring it back up. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the cheeks forward. You'll notice that they come from the underneath up the side and across the top. And I'm just going to put in 1, 2 lock-in turns in there, so you can see it's not focusing there, but you can just see that they're there, and they're just going to give that flash. Now what I'm then going to do is, if I can find it again, there it is. I'm going to come back with my needle from earlier, and I'm going to take my needle and I'm just going to push it between the thread and the holographic tinsel, like that. And I'm just going to push it. I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to push it so that it just draws out the cheeks into a more three-dimensional effect. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to come back round and do that on the other side. I'm just going to place it in, rotate my needle just so it slides. I'm not going to force it. You can make it as wide as you like. I'm going to use the width of the needle. And I'm just going to bring it back and have a look at it. That side could just be a little bit wider. There we go, much better. And then I'm going to come in with my trusty scissors at that 45-degree angle. I'm just going to trim off, and then I'm going to come in at this end and I'm just going to build up the head. You can just see that I've got a little bit of tinsel there, which I don't want to see. I'm coming over the eye, which I don't want to do. So I've just corrected that. You can see I've got it there, and then I'm going to come in 1, 2, 3 turns. Tighten it up. I'm going to come in with my scalpel. You can see that we've got, just adjust my camera, you can see that we've got very much a three-dimensional shape on the cheeks there in the profile, in the plan view. Okay, let's reposition. There we go. Now, again, longevity is really important to me. I don't want to be tying multiple flies. I'm losing enough in the trees as it is. I don't want to be losing them because they've fallen apart. So I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to come in with my resin again. I'm going to apply a drop of resin to my needle. And I'm going to start at the thorax and I'm just going to draw it down and make sure that it goes into those little gaps that I opened up with the needle. And this is where resin really comes into its own, because it makes those colours zing. It makes that peacocky, silvery, bluey green and that red really jump out and stand out a lot more than if they were left normally. And it also has this magnifying effect, as we know water droplets do. So as you place it on, it actually magnifies ever so slightly the width of the materials that you're using. So actually the buzzer looks far bigger than it actually is. And I could just adjust it. If I've got a little bit too much, I just clean off my needle and just draw it away from where I don't want it and add it where I want it to get my profile. There we go. Take my trusty UV torch, Loon Infinity, absolutely fantastic piece of kit, and I'm going to give it a blast, give it a turn. There we go. Probably my torch probably needs a charge, I think. Still does its job. I don't have to charge it very often. Lasts for a long time. But when you first charged it and you put it on the resin, you get puffs of smoke, puffs of resin, you know, vaporized resin appearing. I'm just gonna, there we go. And then my throwback, I'm just going to come in with a very light dusting of Sally Hansen. Big drop there, don't want that. And there we have it. Okay, so and there we have it. So that's our 3 flies for the evening. So we've gone through our sort of variation on my variation on the cat's whisker. There it is with the pseudo hackle. We've got my Flexi legged bloodworm with that centralized bead to allow it to fall through the water column in one plane rather than diagonal. And then finally we've got our buzzers tied on a straight hook. You can tie them on a curved hook, but the technique for tying buzzers, doesn't matter what material you're using, is exactly the same. If you dub in the body, you just dub the body instead. If you dub the thorax, you just dub the thorax. If you put in some peacock, you put in some breathers, you just build them into the thorax and build it up. Okay. Right. So, 3 fantastic patterns there that are going to catch fish. Buzzers in particular. There are times where I've left my buzzer box, and I'm sure lots of us have done this. I've left my buzzer box in the car, and I've been at a still water, and I've been fishing, and patterns just that I've got, just I get the occasional hookup, but nothing significant, and I can see the fish feeding. I know they're on buzzers, and I'm thinking, right, I need to get my buzzers out of the car, and I have to traipse all the way back, and I get my buzzers. I put a buzzer on, and static drift. And suddenly my line has just disappeared into the distance. Okay, so give them a try. The step-by-steps, I'll gradually get those done as well. But and this video will be up live. Throw them out. If you tie them, put them up in the group. Let me see. I like that interaction. And don't forget, I'll be putting everything up onto my YouTube channel as well, and don't forget to check out the website with lots of Semperfly tying goodies, lots of hooks from Sprite, lots of other really cool stuff. And I'll be also fairly soon we're going to be adding some leaders and tippet materials to those from Varivas, which I've been playing with over the last few weeks, absolutely stunning things. So I hope you all enjoyed that. It's great to see many of the people that I've actually met now in various forms, and it's also great to see new people. And I'm going to aim to try and do one of these every week from now on. So I'll be putting up various things, because I'd like some ideas about themes, please. Ideas about themes for these tie-in sessions. What would you like to see tied? Kieran's already suggested tie-in blobs. Thanks, Kieran. Love you too. Don't like blobs. Not very good at them. But if you want to see particular things tied, or a particular theme for a session, or particular techniques, let me know. Well, that's all from me for this evening. I'm going to finish off my red wine, my Chianti over here. If you need anything, you know where I am here in the group. Dan, did I get the flamingo feathers? I know where they are. I just haven't picked them up. I keep looking at them every time I go in and going, they're for me. And then I never walk out with them. Okay. So Dan, I do appreciate the flamingo feathers are there. Just not actually got to the point of actually walking out of the office with them. So take care, everybody, and I'll see you all again next week. Enjoy, have fun.